Hello and welcome to TVB News. The government is planning to complete national security legislation under Article 23 of the Basic Law by the end of next year. Secretary for Security Chris Tang revealed the government is studying both mainland and overseas examples, including that of the UK, and would consider stepping up police powers to detain security law suspects for more than the current maximum of 48 hours. Around 1 year until the government's target date for completion of legislation on Article 23 of the Basic Law. In a media interview, Secretary for Security Chris Tang said the public can now see more clearly the necessity of this local security law. He said before the 2019 social unrest, Hong Kong people wouldn't believe petrol bombs would be hurled everywhere. Citing overseas examples, the security chief said the UK's National Security Act also grants the police longer detention periods with more restrictions on the suspect's area of activity. He said this provides some value for reference to Hong Kong, but stressed the law should be adjusted to local situations. Currently, a person who is detained in custody by the police shall be charged and brought before the court within 48 hours under ordinary circumstances. If the police decide not to prosecute the suspect, he or she should be released after 48 hours. Under the UK's National Security Act, if law enforcement agencies need more time for investigations, they can allow the prosecutor to apply for court warrants to extend the detention period to 5 days for the first time or 7 days for the second time. Former Secretary for Security Lai Tong-kwok, now a lawmaker, said security law-related cases tend to be complicated, and usually it takes law enforcement agencies more time to handle them than other cases. The Security Bureau is seeking funding approval from the Legislative Council Finance Committee to rebuild part of the Lai Chi Kok Reception Center. The $5.5 billion redevelopment plan would double the capacity of the correctional facility. As Sharon Tang reports, some lawmakers have criticized the proposal for being too costly.
Built in 1977, the Lai Chi Kok Reception Center is aging and overcrowded, which prompted plans to rebuild part of the facility. The plan is to demolish 5 of the buildings near Butterfly Valley Road and erect 3 new buildings there. When completed, the new buildings would be able to take in 810 detainees, double the number of places provided by the existing 5 buildings. During a LegCo panel meeting today, lawmakers called the $5.5 billion project far too expensive.
Only serving the needs of prisoners. You said there is a clinic, there is negative pressure rooms, there are also dental surgeries. We don't even have such services outside. Is 5,600 per square foot. This is the cost for the construction of a 5-star hotel. We can't draw a direct comparison because we do have to conform with security requirements, and we have more facilities packed into the space, unlike what you have for residential buildings or hotels.
Meanwhile, authorities also aim to spend $500 million as part of the $5.5 billion requested on a smart prison.
A
lot of people might ask about the manpower in relation to smart prison. Is it possible that manpower resources can be saved? We all know that it is difficult, or even the most difficult, to recruit CSD staff. They need to work on shifts, and they work in a confined environment. Smart prison system features a lot of different elements, some of which can save manpower resources. For example, for patrol, we can leverage robots. However, when we have already identified irregularities, we still need CSD officers to go to the relevant cells to deal with the situation.
Chuk said he's confident the system can enhance the working environment and manpower distribution. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Reports say President Xi Jinping and his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden are expected to hold summit talks in San Francisco next week. This comes amid a tense relationship between the two countries and could mark the two leaders' second in-person meeting after Biden took office in 2021. The pair last met at the G20 summit in Bali a year ago. The meeting is expected to take place on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, while U.S. officials said there was an agreement in principle for Xi and Biden to meet in San Francisco. Beijing has yet to confirm if Xi will attend the forum, scheduled for November 15th to 17th. Nikkei Asia reported the Xi-Biden meeting will take place on November 15th. Meanwhile, Bloomberg said President Xi is set to be the guest of honor at a dinner with top U.S. business executives during his trip. And the U.S. House of Representatives has voted to censure Michigan's Democratic member Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian American in Congress. The vote comes in the wake of her comments on the Israel-Hamas war.
Only Palestinian
the 234-188 tally came after enough Democrats joined with Republicans to censure Tlaib, a punishment one step below expulsion from the House. The three-term Congresswoman has long been a target of criticism for her views on the Middle East. With other Democrats standing by her side, Tlaib defended her stance, saying she will not be silenced and will not let others distort her words. She added that her criticism of the Jewish state has always been directed towards its government, not its people. Top diplomats from the group of 7 leading industrial democracies announced a unified stance on the Israel-Hamas war on Wednesday after intensive meetings in Tokyo. The group condemned Hamas supporting Israel's right to self-defense and called for humanitarian pauses to speed aid to Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip. This comes with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken set to travel to South Korea as Washington and Seoul seek to increase cooperation amid concerns over North Korea's closer military ties with Russia. Daniel Rao tells us more.
The G7 statement issued after 2 days of talks in Tokyo focused largely on the Israel-Hamas conflict.
Our first focus here in Tokyo was the crisis in the Middle East. Yesterday evening, I had an opportunity to brief my colleagues on my travel through the region, as well as extensive engagements by President Biden and our entire national security team. The G7 ministers reaffirmed our staunch support for Israel's right and obligation to defend itself and seek to ensure the attacks of October 7th can never happen again in accordance with international humanitarian law.
The G7 statement on Israel and Hamas said all parties must allow unimpeded humanitarian support for civilians, including food, water, medical care, fuel and shelter, and access for humanitarian workers. It outlined the G7 supports humanitarian pauses and corridors to facilitate urgently needed assistance, civilian movement, and the release of hostages. The G7 statement also addressed other issues. On the war in Ukraine, the group pledged its commitment to supporting Kyiv's fight for its sovereignty and territorial integrity. It strongly condemned North Korea's repeated ballistic missile launches as well as arms transfers to Russia. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is traveling to Seoul after the G7 meeting for talks with his South Korean counterpart. The U.S. and South Korea are seeking to step up cooperation in the face of concerns over North Korea's growing military ties with Russia. This comes as North Korea criticized South Korea for removing a law that banned private activists from sending anti-Pyongyang propaganda leaflets to the North. The North insists such activities amount to psychological warfare and has threatened to respond with a shower of shells. Daniel Rao, TVB News.
Australia's second-largest telecommunications company, Optus, says its services have been restored after a network outage left nearly half the country's population without working internet or phones for much of Wednesday. The outage was first reported at around 4 a.m. local time. It was not until almost 5:30 p.m. that Optus said services had been restored. Optus CEO Kelly Bayer-Rosmarin ruled out a cyber attack, but did not give a reason for the outage. Some 10 million Australians, 40% of the population, are Optus customers and could not use smartphones, broadband internet, or landlines for much of the day. Hospitals couldn't take phone calls, small businesses were unable to process electronic payments, train networks and ride-share services were down simultaneously in some cities. The incident sparked criticism about the robustness of Australia's telecommunications network and, in particular, Optus, which is owned by Singapore Telecommunications. And still ahead, Portugal's Prime Minister resigns amid a corruption probe into his administration. Some advice on how to deal with bedbug bites. And charging facilities at public transport interchanges as part of a pilot scheme on electric minibuses. Welcome back. Portugal's Prime Minister Antonio Costa has resigned amid an investigation into alleged corruption into his administration's handling of lithium mining and hydrogen projects. Costa, who prosecutors said was the target of a separate investigation, announced his decision into a televised statement after meeting President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa. He said his conscience was clear, but he would not stand as a candidate for a fourth time as premier. It is up to the president now to decide whether to allow Costa's socialists, who have a majority in parliament, to form a new government or to dissolve parliament and call an election. Parliament was due to vote on the 2024 budget bill later this month. Costa will remain in his job until the president's decision. Back locally, concerns have arisen that bed bugs, which have been troubling South Korea, could spread to Hong Kong. A dermatologist gave some advice on how to deal with bites from the insect. The Mosanai reports.
Bedbugs, the blood-sucking insects, have recently caused concern in the city after causing skin irritation to people in France and South Korea. Bedbugs can hide and live in items such as suitcases and clothing. A dermatologist said individuals can react differently to the insect's bites.
The symptoms will range from asymptomatic, no symptoms at all, just a bite mark that you might identify on your skin. And then that will go to some like a mosquito bite. And so you form a bump on your skin, and that is red and very itchy. And to a more severe degree, and that the bed bugs can create a huge immune reactions. There's the medical facilities available. I think people should seek the medical assistance. Usually, we give some drugs can modulate the immune reactions, like a class of drug called the antihistamine. If no medical facility is available, what the people can do, usually they can apply some ice packs on the affected area that can soothe the itchiness and the pain.
Nonetheless, House said residents should not be overly worried about the insects as long as they maintain a good level of hygiene. Meanwhile, speaking in a meeting at the Legislative Council today, Under-Secretary for Health Libby Lee said the Center for Health Protection has already discussed some prevention measures with the airport authority concerning bedbugs. Lee added more information will be announced in the near future. Memos 9, TVB News.
The Housing Authority is planning to appeal to the Court of Final Appeal against rulings that granted same-sex couples the right to public housing and subsidized housing. This after the Court of Appeal rejected the Housing Authority's earlier appeal, upholding the High Court's ruling that denying same-sex couples equal rights to public housing was unlawful and unconstitutional. The Housing Authority said the court's ruling involves important legal principles and has far-reaching implications on housing policies. It added the decision to appeal was made after legal consultation. A woman who helped her sister change the medical certificate's reason of sickness to get longer sick leave was sentenced to 4 months behind bars. The 37-year-old freelance editor from the mainland earlier pleaded guilty to 2 counts of incitement to forge documents. Her older sister has ovarian cancer. In 2019, she discussed with an insurance agent to change her sister's sickness on the sick note from cancer to an autoimmune disease to apply for long sick leave. She was arrested by the ICAC in June this year. The judge stressed forgery is a serious offense and believes the defendant premeditated the whole crime. The 37-year-old is facing another case involving conspiracy to defraud. In it, she allegedly underwent various medical checkups between 2019 and 2020 in the name of her other sibling, who bought a critical illness insurance policy worth $500,000. The trial will be heard in March 2024. The government's chronic disease co-care pilot scheme will be launched next Monday. So far, over 300 family doctors said they will join the program. That's only a third of the expected number. Starting from next Monday, residents who are age 45 or above with no medical history of diabetes or hypertension are eligible for the scheme. They can join the scheme by visiting a district health center or express. While the number of scheme participants is less than expected, the primary healthcare commissioner Pang Fei-Chao believes the number will gradually improve. Authorities are rolling out a trial on electric public minibuses. Charging spots will be installed at public transport interchanges in Kwun Tong and Kowloon Tong. The electric minibus can be fully charged in 10 minutes. It was originally priced at $1.4 million. The minibus operator applied for government funds of $700,000 or so, bought the vehicle at half the cost. The government plans to first roll out the pilot scheme in Kwun Tong and Kowloon Tong, and later expand it to Yuen Long and East Hong Kong Island. So some representatives say the lack of charging facilities is a big turnoff for operators to change to electric minibuses. Secretary for Environment and Ecology Jie Qin-wan said the observatory has been using a system enhanced with artificial intelligence to forecast the weather since October. The Huawei Cloud Pangu weather model is found to be more effective than conventional methods. The system is used for forecasting winds, temperatures, and mean sea level pressure. Speaking at the Legislative Council today, Jie Qin-wan said that while the model is better at predicting the trajectory of a typhoon, it can underestimate wind strength. Jie said further operational experience is needed to improve the technology. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.